Please, don't tell him I'm on the phone." Those were among the last words Emily Carter ever said. The dispatcher immediately sensed something was wrong. Emily wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. If anything, her voice sounded controlled, careful, as if she was terrified that someone nearby might hear every word she spoke. The dispatcher asked a simple question. "Are you in danger?" There was a pause, several seconds of silence. Then Emily answered, "Yes." What happened during the next few minutes would become one of the most analyzed emergency calls investigators had ever encountered. Because after that call ended, Emily vanished. And some people believe the clues to what happened were hidden in her own words. Clues that nobody understood until it was too late. Emily lived alone in a quiet apartment complex. She was known as responsible, reliable, and cautious. Friends described her as someone who rarely took risks. She maintained close contact with her family. She had a stable job, a predictable routine. Nothing about her life suggested she would suddenly disappear. Yet during the weeks leading up to the call, several people noticed changes. Emily appeared distracted, nervous, frequently looking over her shoulder. When friends asked if something was wrong, she always gave the same answer: "It's nothing." But according to those closest to her, it clearly wasn't nothing. Something had changed, and Emily didn't want to talk about it. The emergency call began shortly after she left work. At first glance, the conversation seemed straightforward. A frightened woman contacting emergency services. But investigators would later discover details hidden throughout the recording. Details that raised disturbing questions. The dispatcher asked where she was. Emily hesitated. Then she provided her location, a parking area several blocks away from her apartment. She explained that she believed someone had been following her. The dispatcher asked for a description. Again, Emily paused. Then she said something unusual. "I've seen him before." The dispatcher asked where. Emily replied, "Everywhere." Those words immediately caught investigators' attention, not because of what they revealed, but because of what they didn't. Emily never identified the person, never gave a name, never explained how she knew him, only that she had seen him before, many times. As the call continued, the dispatcher attempted to keep Emily calm, but Emily seemed focused on something else. Several times, she stopped speaking mid-sentence, as though she was watching someone or something. Then, she said another strange sentence, one that initially seemed meaningless. "He keeps pretending not to know me." At the time, nobody understood what she meant. But years later, some investigators would return to that statement again and again, because it suggested familiarity, not with a stranger, but with someone she recognized, someone who was deliberately hiding that connection. The dispatcher encouraged Emily to remain where she was while officers responded. Emily agreed. For a moment, everything seemed under control. Then the tone of the call changed. Suddenly, Emily lowered her voice, almost to a whisper. "He found me." The dispatcher immediately asked who. Emily didn't answer. Instead, she said, "He's looking right at me." What followed was several seconds of silence. Then footsteps, faint but unmistakable. The dispatcher repeatedly called Emily's name. No response, only breathing. Then Emily spoke again, and this time her voice sounded completely different. Terrified. "He shouldn't be here." The dispatcher asked what she meant. Emily never explained. Police arrived at the location minutes later. Emily was gone. Her vehicle remained parked exactly where she had described. Her purse was still inside. Her phone had been left behind, but there was no sign of Emily. No witness reported seeing her leave. No evidence suggested a struggle. No surveillance footage clearly captured what happened. It was as if she had simply disappeared. And yet the call continued to haunt investigators, because something about it felt incomplete, as if Emily had been trying to communicate more than she could openly say. As detectives reviewed the recording, they noticed something unusual. Emily repeatedly emphasized certain words. At first it seemed random, but one investigator became convinced it wasn't. He began transcribing every sentence, every pause, every hesitation, and slowly a pattern emerged. Emily kept referring to locations, landmarks, street names, buildings, details that seemed irrelevant to the emergency itself, almost as though she was intentionally planting information. But why? And for whom? The answer would only become apparent much later. Months passed without progress. The case grew cold. Search efforts produced nothing. Witness interviews led nowhere. Public attention slowly faded, but investigators never stopped analyzing the call. Then one detective made a discovery. He noticed that several locations Emily mentioned formed a specific route when plotted on a map. Not a random route, a path. One that led directly to an abandoned industrial district on the edge of the city. The area was searched repeatedly. Nothing was found, at least not at first. Years later, new technology allowed investigators to enhance portions of the original recording. Background sounds that had once been impossible to identify suddenly became clearer. One sound stood out immediately. A train horn, not unusual by itself. Except investigators realized only a handful of locations in the city could produce that exact acoustic pattern. The possible search area became dramatically smaller. For the first time in years, detectives believed they had a lead. When they revisited the industrial district, they discovered something that had been overlooked during the original investigation. An abandoned storage building, hidden behind overgrown vegetation, rarely visited, almost invisible from nearby roads. Inside, investigators found evidence that someone had been using the location for an extended period. Food containers, blankets, personal belongings, and among those belongings a small notebook. The notebook contained no names, no addresses, no direct references to Emily. Yet one page immediately drew attention. Written repeatedly across the paper were the words, "She noticed." Again and again, dozens of times, "She noticed." For investigators, the discovery was chilling, because according to friends and family, Emily had repeatedly expressed the feeling that someone was watching her, someone she recognized, someone she couldn't quite explain. The notebook seemed to suggest that fear may have been justified, yet proving any connection remained impossible. Then another detail emerged. During a second review of the emergency call, audio experts isolated faint background voices. The recording quality was poor. Most words were unintelligible. But one short phrase appeared repeatedly during independent analyses. A male voice saying, "Put the phone down." Authorities could never verify the finding conclusively. Some experts agreed, others disagreed. But for many investigators, it was impossible to ignore, because it aligned perfectly with the sudden shift in Emily's behavior near the end of the call. The mystery deepened further when detectives examined Emily's personal records. They discovered she had contacted several people during the weeks before her disappearance. Former co-workers, old classmates, even distant acquaintances. In nearly every conversation, she asked similar questions. Whether they had seen someone, whether they recognized a particular description, whether they remembered a man from years earlier. Nobody knew who she was searching for, and Emily never explained. One former friend provided an especially important statement. According to her, Emily had once said, "If anything happens to me, it won't be random." At the time, the comment seemed strange. After her disappearance, it became unforgettable, because it suggested Emily believed she was being targeted specifically, not by chance, not by coincidence, but by someone with a reason. As years passed, theories multiplied. Some believed Emily had uncovered a dangerous secret. Others believed she was being stalked. Some even argued she had staged her own disappearance. But every theory encountered the same problem. None explained the emergency call. None explained the fear in her voice. None explained why she seemed to be leaving clues. To this day, the case remains unsolved. No confirmed suspect, no confirmed motive, no definitive explanation. Only a recording, a final conversation frozen in time, a frightened woman asking for help, and words that continue to haunt everyone who hears them. "Please, don't tell him I'm on the phone." Who was she talking about? Why was she so afraid? And what did she know that investigators failed to understand until years later? No one can answer those questions. All that remains is the call, and the possibility that the solution to the mystery was hidden within it from the very beginning. If you enjoyed this story and want more unsolved mysteries, disappearances, and chilling true crime cases, make sure to follow and subscribe.